Welcome back to Project Command. Today's guest is Jared Vermillion, author of The Modern Fire Officer: Communicate, Motivate, and Lead. Jared's work focuses on the human side of being a fire officer: personal readiness, communication, trust, discipline, and the culture that's built at the company level every day. Rather than focusing on tactics, his book challenges officers to think critically about how their behavior, planning, and leadership decisions shape the crews and their organization over time. The Modern Fire Officer speaks directly to company officers and aspiring leaders who want to move beyond rank and experience alone and lead with intention, consistency, and credibility. Jared, thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and thank you for that quite wonderful introduction.
Yeah, man.
That's a very nice and summary of my book, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I got a lot that I want to cover with you today. I got a lot of questions. Before we get into that, I was hoping you could just kind of tell me a little bit about your background and your time in the fire service and maybe why you wrote the book.
Yeah, so my background with the fire service is I'm first generation. My father actually tried to become one, and I think it was in the 80s. But at the time, he couldn't afford it, and he stuck to being an electrician. But he's the kind of guy that if he had, he'd be a chief somewhere. Well loved chief. He's a good man, someone to inspire to be. He's really what helped me to get to where I am, and I'm fortunate to have had that example in my life. In the fire service, I never looked to become a fireman. Never really crossed my mind. I was always kind of like, love sports, being outdoors, and I was getting into some stuff that was going to attach me to a computer, for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
And some people that know me better than that kind of turned me in this direction that were already firefighters. And I asked some questions about it. They gave me good, candid answers, and I said, "Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Sign me up for that. Sounds awesome." And yeah, uh, hit the gas from there, and it's been so far almost 19 years, just like a fun adventure.
Hmm.
Every adventure has its ups and its downs, but if you want to look for something where you can take some purpose and meaning away, that's where you do it, and that's I think why people say it's the best job in the world is because of that type of feeling. Within the fire service, I was fortunate to get hired young at 21. And we have a good, healthy department filled with a lot of professionals. And I was able to get a lot of help from, mentors along the way, whether it was to become a driver, to do all my lieutenant stuff, to do my captain's training, and the book too is a way to kind of pay that back, pay that forward, and not let that body of knowledge die, and learn from not only my mistakes or the things that went well, but the mistakes and things that went well for those that taught me. And what that did show me was humility, because it's on their shoulders that I'm standing.
Hmm.
And that's really a way to keep that humility. It's tough. Humans are funny beast. Because there's times when we're on top of the world, we're the best, and there's times when we're in the dirt, and it could happen like that, quick flip. But keeping that humility nice and across the board, it's tough. And remembering that we're standing on the shoulders of those before us is part of that. But yeah, so making that book, kind of putting all those experiences into writing and putting it out there to the world, it's been an experience. It's been a fun one.
And what are you doing? So, tell me about what you're doing right now in your department. What's your current role?
My current role is I'm a training. Well, I'm a captain at one of our training stations. So it's one of the stations that we get probationary employees
Hmm.
through. It has our training facility within it, and I get a lot of our drivers and captains that come through that need to be signed off so that they can fulfill the role, usually on their final checkoff basis. So I get to kind of be the final. sign off, which is nice and flattering,
Hmm.
in a way too. And I get to put my little imprint, um, hopefully in a good way, on not just their career to help them, but also the department in a, in a legacy type manner, which is really nice. And right now, I'm also the uh, coordinator for our um, it's escaping me
Yeah.
for our peer support team.
Oh man,
Yeah,
that's the Lord's work
which
right there.
yeah, it is. It is a lot of work, but it's a lot of good work, and we've really helped a lot of people. It's helped me a lot. Of course, there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Every department I think right now is struggling with how to develop those programs, and I feel like I could probably get away with saying this is that we're all behind.
Yeah. 100%. There's no doubt
And
about that.
got a lot of catching up to do. I'm doing my best. I'm doing the best that I can, and I'm lucky to be surrounded by a really good team of individuals that really care about each other and the department because they do it for free
Yeah.
and they do it to the best of their ability, which is really powerful.
Let me ask you this, and I don't want to get ahead of my skis here because we're going to get a lot more into your book here in a little bit. But did your current position, obviously you have a lot of, and so to kind of take a step back, one of the sort of the big takeaway that I got from your book was these are the things that if you have a good mentor in the fire service, these are the kinds of things that you're going to hear. These are the kinds of things people are going to teach you. You just kind of took the liberty of putting it into one consolidated place. And this is the kind of stuff that the senior man or your lieutenant or whatever is going to pass along. And so I'm just curious, your current role, where obviously you have a large impact on people that are moving up to different positions, taking on new responsibilities, is that something you stepped into after you wrote the book or before?
A lot of that has to do with before, um, and that's what helped me to develop it.
Hmm.
Was that through the training, I realized that there was one major gap in leadership, um, and probably across the board, and that's the soft skills.
Yeah.
Because there's no direct protocol for it. There's nothing on paper that says step one, here's the flow sheet. You see this, you do this, you see this, you do this. That doesn't exist. A lot of it's by feel, a lot of it's by understanding social interactions and understanding body language, understanding, what people are trying to tell you without telling you it. And that's extremely difficult. It takes years of observation, mindful observation, to where you're going to look into that situation, be like, oh, okay, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
The way they're standing, the way they're doing this, that's telling me exactly how they truly feel, even if they're telling me something else that's different, whether that's good or bad. And then I can use that information
Hmm.
to help the situation, whether that's motivate the person through a personnel issue or to change an attitude towards training, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I saw that was, obviously a difficult thing, especially paired with communication issues that most people have developed. I think maybe because of just the way society is going towards less physical communication, more technological
Yeah.
communication. And in that same trend, I could see it getting worse,
Hmm.
which we don't have the luxury of dealing with. We need to nip that in the bud right away. So all those things kind of came together. I wrote the book. I was a little concerned about letting it off into the world because at the time I still felt like I was new or young or whatever. And I was afraid of what the blind spots were, how it would be accepted, all those different things, and it's been accepted really well, and I've learned a lot since it. The leadership thing doesn't stop, and in its own way is a good help for me because it was a touchstone of my own behavior.
Hmm.
Because if I ever do anything stupid at the station or at the department, everyone's like, "Hey man, you remember in your book you
That's
said
great.
this?
Love
Yeah, you
firefighters. You
suck."
can count
Yeah,
on them. You
I
can
was
count
like,
on
"You got
firefighters
me,
for
you
that.
got me, dude."
Yeah, it's cool too because one of the things I can recall hearing when I was going through acting off. So the way our department works is, you work your way through the firefighter progression, and at a certain point, once you get to what we call senior firefighter, you can be cleared as an acting officer once your lieutenant kind of gives you the sign off. And I remember, one of my lieutenants who was just a real mentor, still is a mentor to me. His name's A.G. Bryant. Talking to me about that Rolodex or slide deck, I guess, of images that you build in your head. And so, of course, every fire is not going to be the same. They're all different. Car accidents are all different, etc. But once you've seen enough, you show up to a fire and you're like, all right, we got a rancher with a power line down on it. I've seen something that looked kind of like this, and this is what we did. And I just think it's cool because it seems like what you've done is you've taken that slide deck of images you have of those social interactions. Like, hey, we just got back from a bad call. This is what this looks like when someone's hurting. Or, hey, I got a senior guy who doesn't want to train. This is what could be the cause of that. And you've taken that slide deck of images you have in your head and you've put it onto paper. And I think that's really useful because it's very difficult to build your own slide deck. It's so much easier to kind of borrow other people's until you
Right.
have enough time to develop out your own.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, experience speaks volumes. And I talk about this same subject in the next book that I'm writing, trying to build upon
Hmm,
this book as the next level. And it's all about building your gut instinct and how to do that. And people
love
that
that.
say, I don't have one. I'm not feeling anything right now. How can I build that? You're not necessarily born with any of that. You have to develop it, and you
Hmm,
develop it through feeding your subconscious by being a mindful observer. So anything that takes place, no matter how mundane you may think that is, there's a lesson in there somewhere, or at least you can stick that in the Rolodex of the mundane things that you've already seen. And you might not have to spend that much time on it. But if you're on something that was much more intricate, detailed, okay, this is what I did. This was the outcome. Maybe I could have done that. Maybe I should look at it from this perspective. Maybe I should look at it from this perspective or this person's
hmm.
perspective. Would I have acted like that? Would I still do the same thing? Would it have worked? I don't know. Put all that into your subconscious, right? And when your back's against the wall and you're like, holy crap, what am I doing? Then all of a sudden your subconscious can start paying this stuff out to you. Hey,
Yeah.
you've seen this before, you've seen this before, you've seen this before, you've seen this before, all these things. On average, this is what happened. Here's a plan of action. I got something to go on. And that's the same emotionally with soft skills, with emotional IQ, is if we're doing that same thing, we're Rolodexing these social interactions that we're having, especially with the people we care about, the people on our crew, the people we have interactions all the time. We're going to have that Rolodex already set to where something happens, we're going to pull from and be like, no, I've seen this before, and this is what happened. This is how they reacted. This is what motivates them. This is how I can help them. So all those things take time to develop, but they are developable. And but it takes mindfulness,
Hmm.
right? It takes to actually think upon those things, and you have to dare to be bored
Huh.
to let that happen. Because if you're doom scrolling, or if you're just whatever, you're not going to have the time to actually reflect on anything. Your mind is going to be taken away from you. It's like all
Hmm.
that stuff is stealing your computation power. You're not allowing your own computation to take place. So it's all about there's a lot of that in the new book. It's a lot of soft skill type, higher level thinking, functioning. At least I hope so. I hope it's I hope it's going to be really useful for a lot of people, because as we discussed before we started recording, getting stuff done is at the behest of the relationships that are made and the rapports that have been made, and the pre-game to that, all the work that you've done to gain respect, or hopefully to gain respect and not to have lost it. But yeah, so the whole functionality of what this book series is that, like you said, it's the soft skills. It's kind of what the a lot of people may agree is a blaring hole for leadership, because it's very hard to define. And in my opinion, it was missing a lot in officer level books. And I thought I might try to hang something there until someone does something better.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I really dare to be bored. I really like that. That's a really good one. There's something else that you kind of made me think of. There's a book, Call Sign Chaos, by General Mathis that I read some years back, and there's a quote in there that just got that I really like. And then again, I heard it. I was interviewing Alec Wands, who does the Chief Exchange podcast.
Yep, yep.
Really cool guy. And said the same quote. And I was like, oh man. And it was operations move at the speed of trust. And man, just can you say it any better than I just think that's so right. And then, those soft skills, I think back on probably the most fun I ever had on the job, and that was my last assignment before I got promoted to captain. I was an engine company lieutenant at Station 10, our Station 10, which is really busy. It's right on our Broad Street corridor, all kinds of calls. And I was lucky, I had this unbelievably solid group of firefighters that I was working with. And man, when we would go to calls. There wasn't a whole lot of you do this, you do this, you do this. We just got there and everybody went to work, and it was a trust thing. They trusted that I wasn't going to micromanage them, and I trusted that they knew what to do. And of course, I change things if they need to be changed, but by and large, we just show up and go to work. And that was a trust thing, and it comes with time. And I think that those soft skills, I think you're absolutely right. I can think of all the books I had to read for the lieutenant process and the captain process. And it's, John Norman, which is very tactics heavy. Great book. I like it. Some people don't. I like it. Very tactics heavy, though. There's almost nothing, if anything, about social skills or soft skills.
Right, right.
And, it's the thing we do every day. You go to a fire every, couple months, maybe a car fire every month. But you're going to deal with your firefighters every single day.
Right, yeah. And soft skills is true power. To me, command is good. There's power there, but the soft skills is true power, because then you get action and people want to do it. They're in on it. They trust you with it. There's a huge difference there. And like you were saying with a lot of the books, they may approach some of the soft skills that might approach like Maslow's hierarchy of needs or something like that, where your eyes just like glaze over.
Mm-hmm.
It's like weaponized Ambien, like start reading that kind of stuff. And but it's not actionable enough. Like, what does it look like for real? When you're with that person, what does it look like? How do I see it? Am I looking at their posture? Am I looking, are their feet turned towards me? Or are they turned away? Does that mean they want to leave this conversation? All those things are the actionable side of that. And that's what we have to get into is those actions, and actually understand when it says, hey, be humble. Okay, how do I do that? Okay, be loyal. Okay, that's a great term, but what does it mean
Yeah.
though?
Define it. Yeah,
Define it
exactly.
and show me the actions to take to do it. And that's what I'm trying to do, hopefully, and trying to do in my own life. Everything's a work in progress,
Yeah, I think man, I love that. So well said, because we do that a lot in the fire service. We give, and it's a lot of times you hear somebody else say it, and so you say it. Like I can remember, sort of related, when I first got on as a rookie, and I remember here we have a lot of balloon frame constructions. At least we did in the first fire station I was at, Station 7. And I remember I always heard first one to the attic wins. You got a balloon frame, first one to the attic wins. Whether it's you or the fire, the first one that gets there wins. And I remember the first time I fought fire in a balloon frame house, we made it to the attic. We got there first. And then I was like, well, okay, great. Did I win? Now what the hell do I do? I'm up here. I'm in the attic with a hose line. Should I spray it on the walls? Should I spray it at the ceiling? Should I, go to, so, defining, it's like, hey, just saying first one to the attic wins is not enough. What the hell do you do when you get there? What tools should you bring to the attic? When you get there, should you flood the floor below you? What do you do? So just saying be loyal, be open, be communicative is not enough. You gotta tell people what you mean, and what does it look like when you're doing it well, and what does it look like when you're not doing it well.
Exactly. So, yeah, I'm hoping that, especially with this next book, that it will really cover some of that stuff and be quite useful. Hopefully,
Yeah.
we'll see. Time will tell.
Nice. Well, that's probably the perfect pivot there. I do want to talk about officer development. And, this podcast, I like to focus on how do we get meaningful work done in the fire department. And there's a lot of things I think that, we don't always teach our officers. We talked a lot about that. And so I want to drill down on some of the things that maybe you've learned in the process of writing this book, or just afterwards, stuff you've thought about. And I think the first thing I want to ask you is, what are we not? We talked about the social skills, but we got our, sort of young officers or new officers. What are we not teaching specifically that we need to teach?
I think we need to have a huge focus on communication skills.
Hmm.
Have classes on that. where you bring in like a talented group that can really help you with that. They can help you with interpersonal communication skills. They could help with public speaking. I think
Hmm.
public speaking is a major blind spot. And it's a scary thing.
Yeah.
People fear public speaking worse than like death, I think, or stakes or something. But when you break down public speaking, it's about pitch, pace, calmness, mindfulness, like all those different things to get a very specific message across. And when you can do that in front of a large group, you can definitely do it on a one-on-one, right?
Yeah.
If you can overcome that fear and you can show control, you can regulate your body, your speech, you can get your message across. That's a powerful thing. And we do that at every level. We do that from the street all the way up to the top in different forms and under different duress. For someone on the street level officer, they may have to, give a message that your loved one is no longer with us. Public speaking will help you to
Yeah.
deliver that message appropriately, right? To understand your audience when you're delivering that message, or all the way up. You get through interpersonal issues. You get through, maybe now you're an instructor. You're teaching a class. You're putting together a class. Public speaking helps you to understand even how you're going to outline that class, make it interesting, know your audience, all that. You get to the point where you're a chief level officer. Now I'm talking to the union. Now I'm talking to city's legal department. Now I'm talking to the HR department. Now I'm talking to the city manager. Now I'm talking in front of council members. All those, all that is going to help you big time, especially, and I've said it before, in the book as well. The higher you go, the less physical things you're going to do, and the more soft skills you're going to do. And the biggest one is going to be communication. You're going to be talking all the time.
Yep.
Everything is talking, working through difficult situations, making decisions, and public speaking, like big time with that. I think another big hole in the way we develop our officers is that we're not giving them a big enough picture.
Hmm.
We're not giving them the 10,000-foot view. So we might be giving them enough to see what that next level is, but then that's it. We should be taking them to the top.
Hmm.
Let them sit with the chief for a day and see what the heck he's doing up there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, okay, this is not what I thought. I didn't realize he even had to deal with half of this stuff. And then the silly things that might come up through the ranks, be like, okay, yeah, I think I'm not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm an officer, I think I'm going to cut that out. Let me see what else is above me. Most likely they'll know what's below them,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't really know what's above them.
Interesting.
So having that 10,000-foot look, and it doesn't have to, it's not some crazy in-depth thing, but it should be enough to where you get a clue of what's going on, so that you understand that this is a symbiotic relationship, that we got to work together on this, and it would curb a lot of negative feelings, to know the why and how of how things are working.
Hmm.
I also think that there's a blaring blind spot with how human resources works,
Hmm.
whether you like it or not. You need to know human resources. You need to know how progressive discipline works. You need to understand their system for if anything was to reach them. That's the difference between a good officer and a great officer, because you will be involved in something like that. If you plan on being
Sure.
an officer for more than a year, you're most likely going to be involved in something. And to have that kind of a background is completely necessary. You need it big time. And this kind of goes along with PR. I mean, with public speaking, but PR, having a basic knowledge of PR, and how the department would like you to present it to the public. Maybe like a easy class of whoever does PR for your department, whether it's fire and life safety, for them to kind of give you an idea, have you along, where, hey, we're going to the Boy Scout or Girl Scout thing. We're doing a whole thing. I want you to come along. You're going to see what it looks like. This is what we expect, because that happens a lot. Suddenly, you have a troop of whoever coming through the fire station. You have an entire group of parents, and they're asking you questions, and you're like a deer in the headlights, something like that. These are all like the hard, soft skills you didn't see coming in a way
Yep.
that then later you feel like, man, I really botched that,
Yep. Been
And
there.
then the developing others, and that, when you're first starting out as an officer, you might feel like you're drowning, to where it's like now I have to help someone else, but all that does is sharpen your skills, and it gives you a reason to sharpen your skills. So the first thing that you should be doing when you're a new officer is figuring out who your informal leader is, and that's you should be going to them and sharpening their skills and getting on board with them and figuring out how you're going to work together and not micromanaging them and understanding what their style leadership is and not getting in the way of it and making their style of leadership better so that you have a more dynamic version of leadership in the firehouse and they can stay true to them. And there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, there is a lot to unpack there, and it takes a lot of experience. It takes a lot of advice. And that's why, as when you're in that officer role and you do those things, you learn those hard things, you are able to communicate those lessons with others. So then you can start to kind of flush out all the stuff that you could keep other people from having to deal with. Because, hey, learn from me, don't do that, and then they can kind of pick up the baton and run from there and not relive the same stupid thing. And so it's again, it's all communication.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well said. Um, Man, that's some great stuff right there. Let me ask you this: are there any challenges that, and I'm sure there are, but what are some of the things that you see, you know, right now, 2025, 2026, that are different than the challenges that maybe you had to deal with when you first got promoted, or, just things that you've seen that, that because these challenges are new, we haven't really been preparing our people to deal with them as much as maybe we should.
Yeah, I think we touched on it a little bit before, which is you have a degradation of communication skills through
Hmm.
technology. So we're going to need to, really figure that out. People, when we were growing up, right? Um, we you couldn't just text your friend, right? And now that's all you do. I mean,
Hmm.
when you need to get a message, you very rarely call someone. I mean,
Yep.
if you if you call someone, they're like, "Dude, why are you
Is
calling me?
everything
Send me a
okay? Is somebody
text."
hurt?
Yeah, yeah, someone die. So there's a lot that's lost there, even from the tone of voice. Having to carry on a conversation, having you know putting the pleasantries in there, the tactfulness of the conversation. It's not just to the point, text or whatever. But a lot of the people coming to the fire service now, that's how they grew up. They grew up talking to their friends that way,
Hmm.
right? Not understanding tone and certain things like that. And of course, I'm not saying they're the only generation that's come in with a deficiency, but every generation has their own according to the one before it.
Hmm.
It's just that this is just something that needs to be overcome, just like every generation overcame something.
Yeah.
Um, to get to a level of customer service that is more than appropriate, on the street level. So I think that's one of them. And what kind of exacerbates it is that we have social divide to the point where belief systems are your complete identity.
Yeah.
And if you challenge any of those, then that deems an actual physical, altercation.
Hmm.
That you could go to that level because you've literally attacked me personally. And not that that takes place all the time in the firehouse, but that's what society is telling us. Society is telling us that um, you can only that you're very unique in your beliefs, and that you have to find that tribe, and then that's the only tribe.
Hmm.
And what that does is it truly destroys the unity of the fire service. There's so much diversity there that should be celebrated, and to try to put everyone and this is their political belief and this is that belief and this is whatever, you're going to have a hard time making a 30-year career. And as an officer, you got to find ways to heal that divide big time. And one of the big ways to do that is number one, to know those people, but to highlight strengths constantly. Because when you do that about people in front of other people, then they start to pick up on, hey, that's a nice person.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great person, and that's how you start to overcome those types of things. But I really think those two things, even as maybe mundane as they might seem, it's easy to say, political divide, communication skills. But that's massive, and I think that the blaring truth of that was easily seen during COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's plenty of experiences that people have had throughout the nation where one was on one side of that story and one was on the other side of that story, and it made station life not too pretty. And that could have been a tough time, for a lot of people. And I think that more of that is coming in the future, and so more soft skills will be needed. Um, but I think on a more physical level too is we're going to continue to gain responsibilities, right? As more things come out, they're going to put it on our plate, and we're going to have to deal with more responsibilities, more equipment. And what usually ends up happening is the more and more that you put on, the less and less time you have to adequately train on it and get good at it, which is dangerous. And then expected compliance doesn't go down.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we gave you this new piece of equipment, but another one's coming. We're trying to train you fast as we can. By the way, do it perfectly. So there's a lot of little things to overcome, I think, in the future. But not that it can't be, but we're going to need to really work to get all the skills necessary to get through that. We don't have the luxury to kind of wait and see. We got to kind of take the bull by the horns, figure some of this stuff out, get these skills now, work on those skills, pass those skills along. Otherwise, I think it could get pretty ugly.
Yeah. Man, I love that. I think that you hit the nail right on the head there. The social skills are the answer. They are the answer. Um, okay, well, last question on this subject. I wonder, are there any things, and maybe there's not, but are there any things that we used to teach officers and still do that, maybe we can just retire? This is, maybe we don't need to be worrying about that anymore?
Um, I think that
Or maybe just put less emphasis on. How about that?
I think we put a lot of emphasis on trying to make your decisions final
Hmm.
in some ways where, listen, you're on a scene of a fire, you say a command, they have to listen. Like, no, they don't. In reality, they don't. They could choose not to. That is reality. And we don't want to put them in a position to where they need to choose. They should have total trust, hopefully, in you and how things are going. What I'm getting at is it's better to teach that everything is subject to change, right? So you don't need to double down because you're afraid of looking foolish.
Totally.
And that's what I'm getting at. Because there's many times where I've been on scene and I've told someone, hey, go over there and do this for me. Cut that door there and whatever. And they're like, hey, yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but there's actually a tree stump right there. Oh, yeah, don't do that.
Hmm.
Right, what do you think? Well, I could do that. Fine, do that. Perfect. Right. In the past, it's almost been, and this is like kind of like an overdone example, but in the past, it's been like you're kind of in this position where now if I go back, then I look like a fool. And I think that still is pervasive in the fire service, whether it's being taught or if it's just a kind of like this lingering effect, this prevailing feeling of the paramilitary ideology. But it's okay to be wrong, and it's great to realize it and do something better.
Yeah.
And I think we need to get more used to that idea that things are subject to change, and you should want to get the input of your crew
Hmm.
on the things that you are doing. I do. There's plenty of strengths that I don't have that are within my crew. For example, my driver right now is an electrician. Um, I can put an outlet in. That's about the extent of that. You know, but he knows what he's doing. So if there's a an issue with that, I'm not going to make a decision. I'm going to look at him and be like, "Hey, you're up."
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I'm going to empower you, you know, with the ability to make these decisions because I don't know. And I think that that is kind of this whole roundabout way of saying like, say I don't know
Hmm.
and get a consensus and get the right thing done instead of doubling down and trying to have that command presence for something that could be wrong.
Dude, having an electrician on your crew is worth they're worth
Oh
their
yeah, I
weight in
know, dude.
gold.
We use
I
him.
worked with when I was at 15, Station 15, we had an electrician there, and man, you can't overemphasize how valuable that skill set is. It's just
At
so
the
valuable.
3 a.m., I think I smell something.
Yep. Yep. Nice. Well, the next thing I wanted to go over with you is, there's a lot of really good, I'll call it wisdom in the book, and I think that, you've probably been in a position where you're giving advice to new officers, and I kind of want to pull some of those I want to pull some of those gems out. So, I'm just wondering, and this is a very broad question, so just kind of go wherever you want with it, but what's some practical advice you would give an officer for their first 30 days? They've been promoted, the first 30 days as a lieutenant. What are you going to tell somebody? What's some practical advice you'd like to share?
Number one, don't expect perfection because that is not going to happen. So just know that you are going to make a lot of mistakes in those first 30 days, and that's okay. Um, no, don't expect perfection from anyone else either, though. But be ready and be willing to, again, roll with the punches as things are subject to change, and be honest about it. Like if you made a mistake, just say, "Yeah, I messed up," and then get a consensus from the crew. Hey, what do you think next time we do it this way? Cool. All right. Awesome. Thank you. You know, that's how we're going to move on. And people respect that because it involves them and it lets them have an investment in the team that they have a voice.
Yep.
What's going on? My personal opinion on this is only give basic expectations
Hmm.
on on what you want. I know a lot of officers like to kind of even print out like a whole form. This is what I expect. You got to do all these things. Um, my thing is get your basics out of the way, right? Because you don't even know what your expectations are half the time when
Totally.
you're a new officer. It's going to change, man. So get the basics one out that safety ones, whatever are, go no goes for you. Don't try to roll out the perfect system right off the bat and be very observant because you might see things, something someone's doing, say, "Hey, I don't like that."
Hmm.
Um, or you might see something like, "I really like that."
Yep.
That's going on the list. So give it a bit, learn the crew, see what you got, what you're working with before you try to change anything. And you have to cherry pick on really what you like, what you don't like, and then you can work off of that. Because again, that's something that's going to change over time. If you asked me when I first started, what are your expectations? It would probably be a pretty much night and day difference
Yeah.
from now, you know. And so yeah, stay open on that.
I really
I
like
would
that. I've seen that go so wrong. The expectations, I've seen people send out these 3-page, expectations list, and it's stuff that's like kind of insulting. It's like keep the
right.
engine, fuel above 75%. Yeah, I know, man. I went through driver
Thanks.
pump
Yeah.
operator school. I don't need you to, he'll bring the
Yeah.
cardiac monitor in on a cardiac arrest. I know, man. What do you think I'm going to
Right.
do with it? It's
And
just,
and
yeah, those can get excessive.
right. And think again, know your audience, right?
Yeah.
Put yourself in their shoes. You come into a situation, say you got a 30-year driver. You're going to tell that guy what your expectations are, and you're a 12-year employee or something
Yeah.
like that. Probably not, or at least that's not the way to go about it. First, build a rapport.
Yeah.
First, get some currency, and then build those expectations, build that relationship. That's how you really get something going. I would say past being very observant, work the hardest.
Hmm.
If it's the first 30 days, work your butt off for
Yeah.
those 30 days. Outwork the rookie if you have one, because that is undeniable. If you're working like that, people are going to look at that. They'll be like, I don't know if I liked him before, or maybe how good he was. I'm not sure, but dang, that guy works. That's respected
Always.
highly in the fire
Universally.
service. Universally, you work your tail off, people are going to get behind you. And they're going to work hard too, because no one's going to sit around with a captain's cleaning around them or doing their laundry or doing anything like that. And what it does is it sets a tone. And it's a, you know, obviously you're not probably not going to keep that type of, energetic, movement throughout your entire, officer career, but it sets a tone. It lets them know that you're willing to do it. And it shows them what that you expect from yourself, and that if you ask them for that same thing, then they've already seen that you've done it.
Yeah,
So
totally.
it's a nice example. I would say I already spoke about figuring out who your informal leader is. They'll just be spinning your wheels if you don't know who that is. You got to know who that is right away. Whether it's the most senior firefighter, the driver, the lieutenant, whoever is there at the station. If you're a captain, if there's a lieutenant there, whatever it may be, know who that is and figure them out quick, right? Because as soon as you say something and leave the table, they're going to look right at that person and say, "What are we doing?"
Yep.
Right? So get them on the same page as you. That should be your first order of business, and talk with them, make rapport, figure things out, what motivates them, get on the same page of where you see the crew going, training, all those different things. What's a no-go for the crew? There might be something you think is great, they think is terrible, and you ain't going to win that one.
Yeah.
Change the game, make it a win, look at it from a different perspective, don't force it. Be smart about it. Good leadership isn't just forcing your way through everything. It's about changing perspectives. It's about leading people the way that they need to be led, not just a one size fits all. So we have to think about, each member and what's right for them, and the history even of that crew. They could have had a captain that did a certain thing. It drove them nuts, right? And they finally got rid of him. And now you're there and you're going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
you're going to be sad, maybe
That's a bad road to
rethink.
go down.
Yeah, maybe rethink, so that's all investigative. We're going to look into those things. We're going to try to figure out these things, and we're going to try to find a better way forward if possible. Not everything, is perfect, and some things have to be fixed, but baby steps, one thing at a time, eat the elephant one bite at a time type of deal. And I'd say one last thing is know what your principles are and stick to them. And know what good customer service is like and stick to that, and don't give in. If you're seeing something and that this is not the right thing to do because it's not the best customer service you could get, it's not the best care level, whatever, don't give in. Deal with it after. Don't make a fool of someone on scene. Don't pull them aside. Let them know this is how we're going to do it. We'll talk about it after, or whatever it takes. But stick to your guns on that, especially when it comes to the care of somebody, in the field. Don't ever give in to that. I did that one time. I'll never forget it. And it's something that spurred on that. Hey, I got certain things that how I want a call to look, and it will look like that. Just because I'm nice doesn't mean I'm a pushover, either.
Yeah, well said. I like that. Yeah, you can't. There's some things you just can't compromise on. You don't want to fight every battle. Hey, the Halligan needs to be right here, not right there. Like, okay, that's not really important. But there are some things like, hey, we're not rude to patients. Like there's just some things you can't compromise on.
Yep.
Nice.
Exactly.
Well, last thing I want to ask about this before we get to our last subject is, are there any common mistakes? Like, what's the most common mistake that you see new officers make?
Um, I'm going to try to go a little deeper on it. I think the most common mistake is that they think they're going to put that shirt on, nothing's going to change.
Hmm.
They think that, I've been doing this job, I'll just keep doing it the same. And it's not the same. And you're responsible for a lot more. And you have to realize that you are responsible for a lot more, and you have to make adjustments to that. And I would say that if you're doing that when you put the shirt on, you're in trouble. You're behind the eight ball. And I'll say what you should be looking at before you do that, before you put that shirt on, when you're saying in your mind, okay, I'm making a plan. I'm gonna get promoted. I'm gonna do this job. That's when you should pre-game that position to where you let your family know this is what I'm gonna do. This is how it's going to look. I'm going to have to do XYZ to do that. That might be time away from you. That I might feel a certain way. I might blah blah blah. Like communicate, with your wife if you or your spouse or whoever that's important to you. That some changes may be coming. Be honest. Ask them honest questions. Do you see me as a leader? You know, is there any blaring thing that I should probably work on, or that might want to do that now?
That's great advice.
Talk to someone that you really trust, at the firehouse, at the department, and say, listen, I want to do this. Shoot me straight. Where do I suck? And
they see it. They know.
Yeah, they
especially
know.
Your wife.
They're
Your wife will tell you.
Yeah, they're not stupid. They know, and get an honest answer, and don't throw it back at them. You asked for it.
Yeah.
Fix it.
Yeah. Right.
Don't get defensive. This is not time for defense. This is time to listen and learn and get better and be thankful that you have someone that will tell you truth.
Yeah.
And that leads into building that foundation, and that foundation to being a good officer has to do with your mental and physical health too, not just your knowledge body. You can't think that, if you're a firefighter and you're like, no big deal, having another couple beers and I'll make it through the morning. You know what I mean? Because whatever. That's a bad idea anyway. When you're an officer, that's an extremely bad idea. You are coming into work. You should be sharp. You should be ready to make a very hard decision right off the bat, because there's nothing that kills happiness like regret or hurting someone or anything like that, hurting yourself. So there's going to be a lot of probably lifestyle changes where it's like, okay, this is the night before work. I'm not drinking.
Yeah.
I'm going to sleep. I'd like to do or stay up, watch a football game. I'd love to do that. But I also would love to have 8 hours of sleep, so I'm not a zombie when I get to work and I can make a choice that matters. I'd like to maybe stop drinking coffee or energy drinks after 10 a.m. so that I can be able to sleep. I'd like to make all these little incremental changes that add up to a massive change and for your mental and physical well-being, so that you are prepared enough to be in a position to learn, to make decisions, to use soft skills appropriately, and look like someone that people want to get behind. Because if you show up to work and you're the guy in charge and you're obviously, tired or whatever, people are gonna be like, dude, I'm not following this guy anywhere.
Yep.
I don't trust that guy at all, or
That's
girl.
right.
I'm not getting behind them. They can say whatever they want to say or think that, we respect them, but we don't. And that's the truth. And we've all experienced that before. So it's not just, putting on the shirt and changing. It's changing before and getting ready for that role mentally and physically. But it's also knowing what scares you, right? Don't wait till you get to that seat and then be like, oh my God, everything scares me. What scares you now? Like if all of a sudden, today you're working that high-rise fire, your first due. Okay. How do you feel about it? Are you ready? I mean, you're never going to be ready for every single situation, but take a hard look at, if you have an idea of what's in your city or what's going to be in your run zone, if you're going to start doing that, what scares me there? This thing, I'm going to attack that now. I want to know everything about it now, not when 100%. I'm sitting in that seat.
Yep.
Not the first day. Then
it doesn't
all of a
get
sudden,
any easier. It does not get any easier just because you're in that front seat.
No, it gets worse, because then everyone's looking at you to make the decision. Stage fright.
Oh yeah.
So my advice is, game plan all that stuff first. Get in the headspace, make those incremental changes, do all that stuff to where when the pressure hits of being in that seat, all that stuff is already in the past.
Yeah.
And you can focus on the present and the future.
Yeah. Man, there's a lot of good stuff there. Even just thinking about it gives you an edge. Even if you've never done it, just thinking about it, not having it be the first time you've ever thought about a big box fire or whatever, just thinking it through gives you an edge. And another thing I really thought that kind of popped into my head while you were talking is, one of the things I noticed is you don't realize how valuable feedback is, or maybe you don't, but when I was a lieutenant, I guess let me start that over. When I was a firefighter, I got feedback all the time from my lieutenant. Hey, do this, make sure you bring this in, don't do that, do this. And then when you become a lieutenant, maybe you're at a two company house and you got another lieutenant to bounce ideas off of, but that feedback gets much less frequent, and maybe your battalion chief comes by, however often, and maybe your captain works with you however often, but you don't realize how valuable that feedback is until you're not getting it every day, and then you'll kill for it.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that's why it's good to rely on the experience and strengths of the crew that's around you,
Yeah,
because there's feedback there too.
yeah, for sure.
And if you're asking for it, it doesn't mean that you're less of an officer. It means that you're more of an officer because you're gaining all of that knowledge. That's
Hmm.
still knowledge. Whether it's, probationary employee or a 30-year guy, they're there for a reason, and they've done some type of training, research, whatever. Half the time, with some of the newer people, they're so ate up with getting into the fire service and they're watching all kinds of videos, they're learning all kinds of, they're reading medical magazines, they're doing all kinds of stuff to where they might not have the experience, but there's a body of knowledge there. There's
Yeah,
there's value added that they can bring to the table.
yeah, right on. Man, love that. Well, Jared, you've been very, very generous with your time. I do have one more thing I want to cover with you, and something that you and I have talked about offline here a little bit, and that's AI in the fire service. This is kind of just a little, sort of pet interest of mine, and I know it's something that you're, into as well. And I just wonder, what do you think about? And I'll leave this broad, just feel free to go wherever you want with this. But what do you think about AI in the fire service? What are you using it for? Where do you see it going? Just go wherever you want with that.
I think it's obviously a powerful tool, and I think we should use it as much as possible to kind of cut out a lot of what we would perceive as busy work. And it can really like curtail time spent at the computer when you know how to use it right. In some of your previous episodes, you speak of creating an AI agent. You can create those to mimic your own voice writing style so that you can knock out emails quickly. You can get through scheduling quickly. You can prompt it and set it up to do sometimes even advanced tasks and with minimal effort. And I think if you really look into doing or using AI that way, then you're going to save yourself so much time that you could use for other endeavors, maybe even just to relax,
Yeah.
take a breath, work on your mental health, work on your physical health, get a nap, uh, you know, take a break, get better sleep. All that stuff helps. I think that we're going to see a lot of its use in the way that we do medical care. And I think that's going to come through large data sets. We're going to be able to crunch how our protocols, how our procedures really do work on the street, and we can get a lot quicker feedback, real time type stuff, instead of going through and trying to crunch these numbers and whatever. We can really get a lot of that data, whether it's just pulling it from a life pack result and uploading and say, hey, tell me how many times we did this, you know, tell me XYZ, boom, done. 5 seconds later, you got an entire, research page done on your department's use of, you know, synchronized cardioversion or whatever it could be. So there's a huge use there. I think we're going to see it in the way that we route to calls, that we use like mapping systems, maybe even dispatch systems. Um, the way that our EKG monitors even work. I'm sure they're going to have probably some AI assistant built into it soon. Maybe the way that we even set up run zones, we could use heat mapping with it, figure out where the station should go or shouldn't go in project management. All those things. I mean, it's integral. It just takes the footwork out of the mundane hard just nose to the grindstone, working numbers, crunching numbers stuff takes a lot of that out to where we can actually think more deeply on that information and use it correctly, hopefully. The one thing that I'm a little worried about is how it'll be used probably to increase litigation.
Hmm.
Um, it'll probably be used or can be used to um, in a disciplinary way, because you'd be able to really Monday morning quarterback a lot of stuff using AI. You can go back, look through history on on your Zoll or your Life Pack, and you could say, "Aha, gotcha." If you really wanted to, you could do a
Hmm.
lot of harm with it that way. So I'm really hoping that we stay away from that.
Yeah. Leave the human
Keep
stuff
it
to
net
humans.
positive. Yeah,
Yeah.
keep it net positive. Be realistic about you know human ability and changing dynamic environments and how that has an effect on the care that we give. Even when we don't want it to. Um, and yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm hoping it's used for net positive. I think it will, but I do think there is going to be some negative in there in the way that it's used in the wrong hands, unfortunately, with that. That remains to be seen,
We'll have to see. We'll have to
Maybe
just
it'll
wait and
just
see.
kill us all before that happens. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's likely that this ends like Terminator, but the chances are not zero. They're
No,
not
they're not.
zero.
They're not zero.
Not high, but not zero. Jared, where can people find your work? Obviously, your book, The Modern Fire Officer. Where can people find more of your work if they're interested in the stuff that you're working on?
I don't have a lot of written work other than the book. I wrote a an article about mental health, um, and the officer's role in that, and it's linked to customer service for Firefighter Nation, which you can find that. It's an interesting piece. I'd like to know people's
Hmm.
opinion on it, and
Yeah, check it out, guys.
essentially what it talks about is that um, mental health, burnout, all those things is directly correlated to customer service. They go up and down together.
Totally.
So um, burnout, mental health, that's a hard fix, but there's a fix that we can do, and that's make better customer service. And usually, because of that, burnout decreases and mental health rises. And how the officer can be involved in that on the street level. And then hopefully this next book. But
Yeah,
most of my,
when can we expect that second book out?
I'm hoping this year.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's my plan. Uh, Maybe late in the year, I don't know. Maybe before, but yeah, I'm hoping this year. And then a lot of podcasts. I love doing podcasts. I like talking. If you haven't noticed.
Me too.
and I don't know. I like the long form conversation podcasts have to offer, and even my book and hopefully books will kind of convey that same sentiment that it's like we're having a conversation. It's not a
Yeah,
textbook.
I got
I
that feel when I read it.
Yeah. So yeah,
Nice.
there's plenty of podcasts, and again, thank you for having me on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everyone out there listening, I very strongly recommend The Modern Fire Officer. Check it out. Um, I think it's a great addition to a training section. Put it on the shelf in the training section, get it in the fire station. I think it's a great book. So, Jared Vermillion, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.